What's up guys, welcome back for the final deck profile of the week. You guys voted for Naya and I can't wait to show off the list. This list is very incarnate heavy and I wanted to make sure I ran a lot of Cthulhu's because I wanted to be able to J-activate and a lot of the stronger Cthulhu's at that. So let's check it out. For the magic stones, I have a little red the pure stone, which I call either red or black on. A Gru Ballesta, which combos extremely well with Flame of the Outer World. 4 magic stone of Scorched Bales for red black. And just 4 monostones of black. For the Resonators, I decided to run 4 Rasputin because it's the best incarnate card right now. You just pay 200 life when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, and you get to add it back to your hand. It's extremely vital because there's also a lot of other combos in the deck you can use with this, which I'll get into extremely soon. 4 Rook Egg to search out Fire Resonators. There's 2 ways to trigger this, either through Incarnate or through Guinevere. This is also the other combo with Rasputin. It's not something that happens often, but I really like the kind of the interaction with it. You can use the second effect to pump up Rasputin by 400, attack for 5 with it, and then just it gets banished and it goes back to your hand. So the fact that you can kind of pump up Rasputin is just kind of like an extra why not. You get a free 5/5 beat stick, and of course you could just use the first effect instead to tribute it away, draw 2 cards and discard a card, and that way you can even get the Rasputin back. So it has a lot of really good usage in the deck, as well as just being able to trigger off stuff like, let's say, 1 of 4 king in yellow. If you don't have the incarnate and you kind of want to just draw into more cards and you have the mana, you can, let's say you don't have an incarnate monster like Naya. You use Guinevere on king of yellow, it goes to the graveyard, you draw 2 cards, discard a card. Let's say one of the cards you drew is now Naya. You then add a king in yellow, play it, sack king in yellow and Guinevere for Naya, and then get another king in yellow again. So she can really like kind of fix your problem hands and get you those pieces you need. 3 Haster, I like 3 because you can keep looping into it with multiple Rook Eggs. If you have a Rook Egg and Rasputin, let's say 2 Rook Eggs and 1 Rasputin, you can sack Rook Egg and Rasputin for Haster, search Haster, then add Rasputin back to your hand, play Rasputin, go Rook Egg and Rasputin into Haster, search another Haster, and then tribute your Haster and play the Rasputin again to go into another Haster and just keep doing it and removing all their field. 2 Naya. I only decided to run 2 because I have 4 spirals. I like Naya before spiral only when going against green decks because I feel like you can take a look at their hand, make sure you pitch that cake zone, and then spiral them next turn if you know it's safe. Like, let's say if they didn't have 2 cake zones. But against most decks, I feel like spiral is really strong and it's not extremely necessary to drop the Naya that early. So maybe turn 3 is still good, but you can just spiral first and then go into it, or you can do this and then spiral, depending on what you anticipate is in their hand and how much you think it's going to be a problem, really. But I felt as though 2 was enough. And then 2 Byakhee. I would want to run more of this, but because I have a really high fire kind of base in the deck with the 4 Rook Eggs and 4 Guinevere's, she can only come out if you do 2 darks. And I didn't want to have like a dark and a fire. Like, you know, the real only way to summon this is either 2 Rasputins or Rasputin and king in yellow. So I just decided to go with 2. I figured with Guinevere I can probably dig for it as fast as I want and, you know, try to get to it quickly so my mid game is okay. Which, by the way, because of that fire lineup, you really want to mulligan strong at the beginning to hit Rasputin and king in yellow before anything else. And then everything else just kind of comes in turn 3 and 4 to help kind of keep building up the blocks for this. And then 2 Yogg. It's also really important to note that a lot of these Cthulhu's are extremely high cost, of course, because of the incarnate mechanic. And Guinevere can discard these, and I have Book of Ebons in this deck. So let's say if you go draw 2, discard Yogg, that Yogg isn't technically like a discard card. I don't feel like I lost the card because I know at any point in the deck I can technically just use Book of Ebon and get it back. And the reason why I'm running Book of Ebon I'll explain later on, but yeah, generally these cards are really easy to play because of all the small incarnate monsters you have and how easily you can plus off all those monsters. And in a second you just go into one of these, you then just J-activate Naya if you haven't tapped for a stone. And let's say with Byakhee, you get a 9/9 Byakhee and a Naya, and it's also of course 900 and now 1200 defense. And next turn when you tap Byakhee to get 900 attack and it's 18, Naya becomes 18. So that's 3600 to face, which leaves them for like just thunder range, which is insane. For the spells, I decided to run 4 thunders, of course. This is just self-explanatory, 500 direct or just 500 to a resonator. 3 Flame of the Outer World. I didn't feel as though I needed 4 because Gwen can just go into this really quickly if I keep drawing, so I wasn't really too worried about using it. 4 Spirals, like I said, I prefer this over Naya a little bit because even though Naya has an insanely big body, I like being able to take out 2 cards over 1, plus she kind of combos with this well anyway because they're going to not be discarding what they want, of course, because they're trying to still get their plays going. So if you can get a Spiral off first, you know what's left in their hand is really important, and then when you go with Naya, you could just pick it anyway. And of course, you could have done that in the first place, but like I said, I only feel like that's worth it against green because you can get the Cake Stone out of their hand so they can't stop the Spiral. But I don't really feel like it was totally necessary to specifically try to go with a lot of Nayas and less Spirals. It just, Spirals seems less situationary and easier to use. 2 Stoning to Death. Cards like Hamlin or Etna are really troublesome for this deck. You don't want them to tap down your Byakuya or anything because then you can't get any damage in whatsoever. So I wanted to have a lot of removal outside of just using Naya, and so I decided to use at least 2 Stoning to Deaths. And then lastly, like I mentioned, I have 2 Book of Ebons. I don't think Necro's a bad card in this game, in this deck, because you could still flood the field with the little monsters and then incarnate them away, but because there's no ramp, having to play Necro for 3 and then hoping to have enough to summon, let's say, 2 Rasputins, that's 5, and then now incarnate for something from your hand seems a little hard to do. I have 1 Necro sided just in case I decided to use it, but I don't know, Book of Ebon just seems so much easier to use because I could just discard everything I don't want and then just later bring it back. Not to mention that with Naya and Spiral, just in case you're going, let's say you're going against a Bahamut deck and they're playing something like a Blazer, and you Spiral it early game and you're like, yeah, I'm not going to use this anytime soon, so I'll just pitch my Blazer. Later on, even by just turn 3, you could just revive that Blazer and it's now yours. And that's kind of a good feeling. I didn't want to rely too much on using their cards because you don't know what they're playing. If you're going against like a Grim deck, and unless you were going to take like a Hamlin or something, reviving their Guerrillas or Elvish Priests or anything like that isn't worth it. Even like an Odd Grim, their Marchers and stuff aren't really doing anything. So I didn't want to rely on stealing stuff my opponent controls, but I figured with all my discards, with Gwen and just, incarnating everything and having the incarnate die, let's say I actually pull off a Yogg regularly because I do have a lot of 1-drops, and I get 1 attacking before they stoning it or something, I could just bring it back later. Now that's another Yogg they have to deal with. So I actually really like this card in the deck. My side deck is really weird. I kind of just wanted to test stuff opposed to just having a really strong one because I felt like the main deck was already really strong. So I have kind of like either discussion cards in here or just cards that I felt might work, so I wanted to test it. I ran 4 Acolyte in the side because this is actually one of those cards I mentioned is just discussion related. This card reads, when this card is banished by incarnation, you may pay 400 life. If you do, draw a card. And for those of you who don't know, the way priority works in this game is if I play 2 Dark, or Dark and Fire, and I play Acolyte of Darkness, this is now in the chase. When a card enters the chase, priority is passed, and they have a chance to respond. So they can, thunder something on your field, they can Zeke's this. That's how it works. So they get their opportunity to do something to this card or to anything on my field when this is in the chase. And once this has officially hit the field, unless I pass priority to my opponent, you can no longer thunder this, you can't do anything to this, you can't use an activate, you can't do anything. It's now my priority, and I'm allowed to continue my play. So, assuming you have a Rasputin, and you get this off on the field, you now have two targets on the field for incarnation, and there's nothing they can do about it unless they did something to Rasputin prior to this hitting the field. So I don't know why people were so against using this card. I'm guessing it's because, like King in Yellow does target, does combo with Gwen, and of course you could just use it as a blocker and still search a card, whereas this is strictly for incarnate. But you also have to take into consideration that I feel like the argument this card has is you getting a draw instead of just searching another King in Yellow can be game changing. If you go into something like a Naya and take a card out of their hand and the card you drew is a Spiral and you can afford to play it, that's nuts. That's literally, you're going to take 3 cards out of their hand while still getting an 8/8 beat stick. If you draw into a Flame and they have a troublesome monster that was probably going to kill your Naya next turn, or something that might be able to get in the way of Byakuya. Let's say you tribute for Byakuya, you draw into a Flame, you have a Gru Ballesta up and you can afford the Flame, and they have a Hamlin. He can't rescue anymore because you could just Gru Ballesta and Flame. There's just so many ideas I have that can work with using this card to draw over specifically using King in Yellow. And I guess the other advantage King in Yellow has is that it is a Cthulhu, so I can deactivate for free if I play it. But then again, unless you're in an extremely, like, really desperate situation, I don't see why you would just play King in yellow and then deactivate Naya. It doesn't really make sense unless you're, like, really desperate for the removal that Naya has. So I don't know, I mean, let me know what you think. This card is kind of, like, in the air, but I didn't think it was super horrible. And then I decided to play one Emissary. This card says on enter, which the new enter, where it's not actually like the stop by Abdul enter, you get to recover a target Resonator. So my idea was if I was going in something and I needed more speed, I can play this and it would be something like, you know, during draw phase, Byakuya tap. It's 18-18, swing for 18, drop this, recover it at the swing for 18 again. It didn't seem really that insanely great, but I just decided to play one because, I mean, no one's really talked about this card, so I figured I'd, you know, somewhat mention it because I don't think it's horrible. And then I think it's really interesting that it could banish itself to destroy standby, because I almost feel like they're implying Kaguya was going to be relevant this format, and maybe we just haven't thought of anything, and or maybe there's going to be standbys that are really relevant in the Alice cluster. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, this card overall, I wanted to, you know, keep it on everyone's radar because I feel like it is good to just, you know, think about this card at least, because you never know when you're going to need it. But yeah, and then I had 2 Cthulhu. Just 2 because I don't want to be tributing off all my Gwens. I figured if this is in my deck, it'll be something that I search off Rook Egg instead of trying to trigger the search off Rook Egg with it. So I would do something like Rook Egg and Rasputin into Haster, search Cthulhu. If I really needed damage, tribute Haster away for Cthulhu and just attack if I'm really trying to speed up the game. It kind of seems like a minus, and I kind of agree, but I figured I couldn't think of anything that would make the deck faster. 3-0. 0 is just great because for stuff like Green Grim or anything like that. For those of you who don't know in general, because I know a lot of people aren't extremely key on every single ruling, the way her enter effect works is very interesting. If a card doesn't specify target, just like how the Excalibur and Leviathan work, where you can tap them to give +2/+2, or, you know, the 200 effect in general, and then untap and do it again, and then when you J-activate it, it affects the J-Ruler anyway. That specifically works because the card doesn't say target J-Ruler, it just says your J-Ruler. So the same effect applies for 0. If you draw and on your draw you're tapped out and I feel safe to drop 0, it now says all Resonators you control will lose flying and -200, -200. And so at any point during your turn, even after 0 is played, if you play a Cheshire Cat, it'll die, because that effect is just blanket on your field. Imagine just like a giant darkness falling on their field, and anything that falls into that darkness is affected by the effect. So you can use 0 in a lot of ways. You can kind of, I've played Grim myself where someone's dropped a 0 on my field and all my little Grettles and Cheshires died, and my hand was just more Cheshires and Green Cats, and I was like, wow, if I play these, of course I still get the enter effect, but I'm just gonna like have my cards die, so I had no choice but to just end my turn. And it can just work in a lot of different ways. I like 0. And then 2 Awakening for stuff like Light Rush, because they do get kind of crazy and they have a lot of like 500s and 600s after all the buffs. And then 2 Dark Pulse, which also works against Light Rush, but works also really well against Knights. And then just the 1 Necronomicon I mentioned that I was playing. This, like I said, I'm not sure if I would play this over the Book of Ebons, but I never know, unless I maybe if I switch out the Cthulhu's and stuff, it'll be worth it because they're less expensive. But yeah, I typically just thought I'd just side one and see how it went. So thanks for watching, guys. That was Naya's deck profile. If you guys have any questions or suggestions, please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. If you do want a copy of the deck list, just make sure to check out the Too Long Didn't Watch version, which will have a link to it in the description below. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do so. All my videos come straight to you. I have 5 more deck profiles coming next week, as well as coverage from Houston once I'm back. And I will catch you guys next time.